You didn't even try to lie. Because you knew I'd stopped believing long ago.
The wrench slipped from my oil-stained fingers as my daughter's voice cut through the midnight air like a rusty blade. I was under the hood of a '67 Mustang, trying to lose myself in the familiar rhythm of fixing what was broken, when Samantha's words drifted down from the kitchen window above my garage. "Dad, you're blind. Mom needs a real man, not some loser clinging to his tools. Dale's always been there for us and for her. Just leave already." Nick Forrest, that's me, 43 years old, owner of Forrest Auto Repair, inheritor of my father's dream and apparently my family's disappointment. I wiped my hands on a greasy rag, the cotton absorbing more than just motor oil. It was soaking up 20 years of marriage, 19 years of fatherhood, and a lifetime of believing I knew where I stood in this world. The kitchen light cast yellow squares across the cracked concrete of my driveway. Through the window, I could see my wife Erica's silhouette, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the overhead bulb's glow. She was gesturing with that animated way she had when she was explaining something important to someone she thought was too stupid to understand. "He's pathetic, Sam. Your Uncle Dale built something real with his life. Look at this place." Erica's voice carried the particular venom she reserved for discussing my shortcomings. "Your father's stuck in 1985, thinking people still care about fixing old cars when they can just buy new ones." I should have walked away, should have gone inside, grabbed a beer, and pretended I hadn't heard my wife and daughter dissecting my failures like they were planning a garage sale. Instead, I found myself creeping closer to the window, a 43-year-old man playing spy in his own backyard. "Dale's got vision," Erica continued. "He's expanding the business, bringing it into the 21st century. Your father just wants to keep playing with his wrenches while the world moves on without him." My brother Dale, Golden Boy Dale, who talked our dying father into signing over half the family business to him 3 years ago. Dale, who drove a brand new BMW and lived in a McMansion on the hill, while I still lived in the same split-level ranch I'd bought with Erica when we were young and stupid and thought love was enough to build a life on. "I know, Mom, but what about Dad? He's going to freak out when he finds out about you and Uncle Dale." The wrench I'd been holding clattered to the concrete. The sound echoed through the garage like a gunshot, and for a moment the voices upstairs went silent. My heart hammered against my ribs as I processed what my 19-year-old daughter had just said. "You and Uncle Dale." The words repeated in my head like a broken record, each repetition driving the meaning deeper into my skull. My wife, my brother, the two people who were supposed to have my back had been stabbing me in it instead. "He'll get over it," Erica's voice resumed, quieter now but still audible. "Men like your father, they're survivors. They adapt. Besides, it's not like this marriage has been working for either of us." I pressed my back against the garage wall, the rough wood siding catching on my work shirt. The night air felt suddenly cold against my skin, raising goosebumps along my arms. Above me, the conversation continued, my wife and daughter planning my emotional funeral while I stood 6 feet below, very much alive and listening to every word. "Dale makes me feel alive again, Sam. Your father, he's a good man, but he's small. Small dreams, small ambitions, small life. I'm 40 years old, and I refuse to spend the rest of my days pretending that's enough." Small. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of working 60-hour weeks to keep the business afloat, 20 years of coming home exhausted but still trying to be a good husband and father. And I was small. I thought about Dale's last visit to the shop 2 weeks ago. He'd strutted in wearing a $500 suit, talking about modernizing our operations and maximizing our market potential. I'd listened to his corporate buzzwords and nodded along, thinking he was just being Dale. Always the salesman, always the big shot. I hadn't noticed the way he'd looked at Erica when she'd stopped by with lunch. Hadn't seen the lingering touches, the shared glances, the secret smiles. But I saw it now, replaying every interaction through this new, horrible lens. The way Dale had started coming around more often. The way Erica had started dressing up for his visits. The way she'd begun working late at a real estate office, coming home smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. "When are you going to tell him?" Samantha asked. "Soon. Dale thinks we should wait until after the business restructuring is complete. He doesn't want your father doing anything stupid that might hurt the company." Hurt the company. Not hurt me. Not hurt our family. Not hurt our daughter. The company. Dale's company now, apparently. I crept back to the Mustang, my hands shaking as I gathered my tools. The familiar weight of the wrenches felt foreign now, like I was holding someone else's life. Everything I'd thought I knew about my world had shifted, leaving me standing on uncertain ground. The kitchen light clicked off, and I heard footsteps on the stairs. Erica would be coming to bed soon, sliding between sheets that suddenly felt contaminated by her betrayal. She'd probably kiss my cheek if I was pretending to be asleep, maybe even whisper goodnight like she had for 20 years. I couldn't face that. Not tonight. Instead, I climbed into my pickup truck and drove through the empty streets of our small Massachusetts town. Past the shuttered factories that had once employed half the neighborhood, past the rusty tap where the old-timers still gathered to complain about the government and reminisce about better days, past the high school where I'd met Erica at a basketball game in 1985. The town looked different in the darkness, smaller somehow. Or maybe I was just seeing it through my wife's eyes now, seeing the faded paint and broken dreams, the stubborn refusal to adapt to a world that had moved on without us. I ended up at the 24-hour diner on Route 9, sliding into a booth that smelled like cigarettes and broken promises. The waitress, a tired-looking woman named Dolores who'd been working the night shift since before I was married, poured me coffee without being asked. "You look like hell, Nick. Everything okay?" I wanted to tell her. Wanted to spill everything to this stranger who'd served me coffee and sympathy at 3 a.m, more times than I could count. Instead, I just nodded and stared into the black liquid, watching my reflection waver on its surface. My phone buzzed. A text from Erica. "Where are you? It's late." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Working on the Mustang. Be in soon." Another lie to add to the collection we'd apparently been building without my knowledge. I drove home as the sun was starting to rise, painting the sky the color of rust and regret. Erica was asleep when I slipped into bed, her breathing deep and regular. She looked peaceful, almost innocent in the early morning light filtering through our bedroom curtains. I lay there watching her sleep, this woman I'd loved for more than half my life, and tried to figure out when she'd become a stranger. 3 days passed before I found the burner phone. 3 days of watching Erica move through our house like everything was normal, kissing me goodbye before work, asking about my day over dinner, discussing Sam's college expenses like we were still a team planning our daughter's future together. 3 days of watching my brother Dale stop by the shop with his new ideas and his expensive suits, clapping me on the shoulder like we were still the Forest Boys against the world. 3 days of my daughter treating me like a piece of furniture she had to navigate around to get to the important things in her life. I might have gone on pretending forever if I hadn't been looking for Erica's insurance card in her purse. She'd asked me to grab it before her dentist appointment, and I was digging through the usual collection of receipts, lipstick tubes, and loose change when my fingers found something that didn't belong. A cheap flip phone, the kind you buy at gas stations when you don't want your calls traced, the kind you buy when you have something to hide. I stood in our kitchen, holding this piece of evidence like it was a live grenade. Part of me wanted to put it back, pretend I'd never found it, go on living in the comfortable lie my family had built around me. But a bigger part, the part that had been eating at me for 3 sleepless nights, needed to know the truth. The phone had 17 missed calls, all from the same number. The text messages told the story I'd been dreading to read. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place? D. Your husband's working late again. Perfect timing. D. Sam's at college this weekend. We could go to your place for once. D." And Erica's responses, each one a small knife twisting in my chest. Nick's so clueless. Sometimes I wonder how he ties his shoes in the morning. The motel is safer. He never goes anywhere but the shop and home. I can't keep pretending much longer. When are we going to tell him? I scrolled through weeks of messages, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. There were photos, too, nothing explicit, but intimate enough to make my stomach turn. My wife's face, flushed and happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. My brother's hand on her cheek, his wedding ring clearly visible. The most recent message was from yesterday. "Riverside Motel, room 12, 8 p.m. Can't wait to hold you again." I checked the timestamp. 8 p.m. yesterday was when Erica had told me she was showing a house to potential buyers, when I'd kissed her goodbye and told her to drive safely. My hands were shaking as I put the phone back in her purse. The kitchen around me looked the same. Same yellow walls, same family photos on the refrigerator, same coffee maker we'd bought for our 10th anniversary. But everything felt different now. Contaminated. I walked through the house like I was seeing it for the first time. 20 years of shared memories hung on every wall, sat on every shelf, whispered from every corner. Our wedding photo on the mantle, both of us young and grinning like we'd won the lottery. Pictures of Sam as a baby, a toddler, a gap-toothed kid missing her front teeth. Family vacations to Cape Cod, Christmas mornings, birthday parties. Had any of it been real? Or had I been playing house while my wife counted the days until she could escape? I was still wandering through the wreckage of my assumptions when Erica came home from work. She looked beautiful, as always, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her real estate blazer tailored to show off the figure that had caught my eye in high school and never let it go. "Did you find my insurance card?" she asked, kissing my cheek like she had 1,000 times before. "Yeah, it's on the counter." She grabbed the card in her purse, and I watched her face for any sign that she knew I'd found her secret. But Erica had always been good at hiding her feelings when she wanted to. It's what made her such a successful saleswoman. "I've got another showing tonight," she said, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "Don't wait up. Another showing, another lie, another night with my brother in some cheap motel room while I sat at home like the clueless husband I apparently was." "Which property?" I asked, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. "The Henderson place on Maple Street. Young couple, first-time buyers. You know how those showings can run long?" I knew the Henderson place. It had been sold 3 weeks ago. I knew because Mrs. Henderson had brought her car to my shop the day after closing, talking my ear off about how relieved she was to finally get the place off her hands. "Drive safe," I said, and meant it. Whatever else was happening, I didn't want anything bad to happen to her. I just wanted the truth. After she left, I sat in my living room staring at the family photos and trying to figure out my next move. I could confront her, demand an explanation, force the conversation that would end our marriage. I could call Dale, tell him I knew, let him sweat while he figured out how to explain betraying his own brother. Or I could follow her. The Riverside Motel was exactly the kind of place people went when they didn't want to be seen. Tucked away on a side road behind a stand of pine trees, it catered to truckers, cheating spouses, and anyone else who paid cash and didn't ask for receipts. I parked across the street and waited. At 8:15, Dale's BMW pulled into the lot, and my brother got out wearing jeans and a polo shirt instead of his usual business attire. He looked around nervously before walking to room 12 and knocking. The door opened, and there was my wife. She was wearing a red dress I'd never seen before, something that hugged her curves and made her look 10 years younger. She threw her arms around Dale's neck and kissed him like they were teenagers sneaking around behind their parents' backs. I sat in my truck watching my marriage officially end, and the strangest thing was how calm I felt. The anger would come later, along with the hurt and the humiliation and the rage. But in that moment, I just felt empty, like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything that had made me who I was. They disappeared into the room, and I drove home to our empty house. I sat at the kitchen table with a beer and a yellow legal pad, and I started making a list. Things I knew for certain. My wife was cheating with my brother. My daughter knew and had chosen their side. My marriage was over. My business partnership with Dale was compromised. My family, as I'd known it, was finished. Things I didn't know, how long this had been going on, whether other people knew, how much of my life had been a lie, what I was going to do about it. I was still sitting there when Erica came home at midnight, her hair slightly messed and her lipstick gone. "How did the showing go?" I asked. "Great. I think they're really interested. We might have an offer by the end of the week." She kissed the top of my head and headed upstairs, and I listened to her shower running, washing away the evidence of her betrayal. I finished my beer and added one more item to my list. Things I was going to do about it. The answer came to me as I was falling asleep in the guest room, having told Erica I didn't want to disturb her after her long day. If they wanted to play games, I'd show them how it was done. The first thing I did was start paying attention. For 20 years, I'd been sleepwalking through my own life, trusting that the people I loved had my best interests at heart. Now I watched everything with the cold focus of a man who'd learned that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. I watched Dale during our Monday morning business meeting, noting how he avoided eye contact when he talked about restructuring our client relationships. I watched him check his phone every few minutes, smiling at messages I now knew were probably from my wife. I watched Erica getting ready for work, taking extra time with her makeup on days when Dale would be at the shop. I watched her delete text messages before putting her phone down, watched her hide the burner phone in different places around the house. I watched my daughter during our weekly Sunday dinner, saw how she looked at me with a mixture of pity and impatience, like I was a problem she was waiting for someone else to solve. But mostly, I watched myself disappearing. The other mechanics at the shop started treating me differently. Nothing I could put my finger on exactly, just a subtle shift in the way they responded to my instructions, a hesitation before they agreed with my decisions. Dale had been busy, it seemed, positioning himself as the real boss while I was just the guy who happened to have his name on the building. "Nick, we need to talk about the Morrison account," Dale said during our Wednesday meeting. He was wearing another expensive suit, this one navy blue with a tie that probably cost more than I made in a day. The Morrison account was our biggest client, a local trucking company that brought us steady business maintaining their fleet. It was also the account that had kept us afloat during the recession, the foundation that everything else was built on. What about it? They're not happy with the service they've been getting. Jim Morrison called me personally to complain about the turnaround time on their last job. I remembered that job. A transmission rebuild on one of their semis that had taken 3 days instead of the usual 2 because we'd discovered additional problems once we got inside the gearbox. I'd called Morrison myself to explain the delay and the extra costs, and he'd been understanding about it. Morrison seemed fine when I talked to him. He was being polite, Nick. But he told me he's considering taking his business elsewhere if we can't get our act together. Dale leaned back in his chair, and I caught a whiff of the cologne I'd been smelling on my wife, the same expensive scent that had been lingering in our bedroom, our car, our kitchen. "What do you suggest?" "I think it's time we brought in some fresh blood. Maybe hired a shop manager who could focus on efficiency while you concentrate on the hands-on work you're good at." A shop manager. Someone to run my own business while I worked under their supervision like any other employee. This is my father's shop, Dale. Our father's shop. And he'd want us to do whatever it takes to keep it successful. Our father, who'd built Forest Auto Repair from nothing, working 16-hour days and sleeping on a cot in the office when money was too tight to afford both rent and a mortgage. Our father, who'd taught me everything I knew about engines and integrity and treating people fairly. Our father, who Dale had sweet-talked into changing his will during his final illness, when the old man was too sick and medicated to understand what he was signing. "I'll think about it," I said, which we both knew meant no. Dale's smile was the same one he'd used to get out of trouble when we were kids, charming and just a little bit condescending. "Don't think too long, Nick. Morrison's not the only client who's been asking questions." After he left, I called Jim Morrison myself. He was surprised to hear from me. "Problems? What problems? You guys did great work on that transmission. Sure, it took an extra day, but you found issues that could have cost me a lot more down the road. Why would you think I was unhappy?" I hung up feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Dale wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was actively sabotaging my business, poisoning my relationships with clients, setting me up to fail so he could swoop in as the savior. That night, I followed Erica to another showing. This time it was the Riverside Motel again, room 8. I sat in my truck watching the light in their window, and I started planning. The next morning, I went to see Red Kowalski at his boxing gym downtown. Red had been my coach in high school, back when I'd had dreams of being something more than a small-town mechanic. He was 70 now, his face a roadmap of old fights and hard lessons, but his eyes were still sharp. "Nick Forrest," he said when I walked into the gym. "Haven't seen you in here for a while. What brings you by?" "I need to hit something." Red looked me up and down, taking in whatever he saw in my face. "Bad day? Bad life." He handed me a pair of gloves and pointed me toward the heavy bag. I spent an hour pounding leather and canvas, working out 20 years of frustration and betrayal and rage. When I was done, my hands were sore and my shirt was soaked with sweat, but my head was clearer than it had been in weeks. "Feel better?" Red asked. "Getting there. You want some advice from an old man who's seen his share of fights?" "Sure. Don't punch first. But when you do punch, make it count." I thought about Red's words as I drove home. Don't punch first, but when you do punch, make it count. Erica was in the kitchen when I got home, preparing dinner like the perfect wife she'd never actually been. She looked up when I walked in, and for a second I saw something flicker across her face. Fear? Guilt? Or maybe just annoyance that I was interrupting her performance. "You're sweaty," she said. "Where have you been?" "The gym. Thought I'd start getting back in shape." "That's nice, honey. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. I went upstairs and showered. washing away the sweat and the anger and the last traces of the man I'd been before I'd learned the truth. When I looked in the bathroom mirror, a stranger looked back. Same face, same brown hair starting to gray at the temples, same blue eyes. But something fundamental had changed behind those eyes. At dinner, Erica chattered about her day, her clients, her plans for the weekend. I nodded and made appropriate sounds, playing the role of the attentive husband while I studied her face. She was beautiful. I'd give her that. Even at 40, she could still turn heads when she walked into a room. But beauty without loyalty was just decoration, and I was tired of living in a museum. "Sam called today," she said between bites of the chicken she'd prepared. "She needs money for textbooks." "How much?" $500. I thought about my daughter's social media posts, the ones I'd started monitoring after overhearing her conversation with her mother. Pictures of her at parties, expensive dinners, spring break trips that cost more than most people made in a month, all funded by the father she thought was too pathetic to deserve respect. "I'll transfer it to her account tomorrow." Erica smiled, the same smile she'd given Dale outside the motel room. "You're a good father, Nick. A good father, a good husband, a good brother. A good man who'd spent his whole life being good while the people around him took advantage of his goodness." After dinner, Erica announced she had paperwork to catch up on and disappeared into her home office. I could hear her on the phone, her voice low and intimate. Talking to Dale, probably, making plans for their next rendezvous. I went down to the garage and started working on the Mustang again. The engine was finally coming together, all the pieces fitting where they belonged, everything working in harmony toward a common purpose. Unlike my family. I was adjusting the carburetor when my phone rang. Dale's name appeared on the screen, and I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Hey, brother. How's it going?" "Can't complain. What's up?" "I've been thinking about our conversation today, about bringing in a shop manager." "Yeah?" "I might have found someone. Guy named Steve Hendricks used to run operations for a chain of quick lube places in Boston. He's got ideas about streamlining our processes, maybe adding some additional services." "Additional services? Like what Dale had been providing my wife." "I told you I'd think about it." I know. But this guy's only available for a few more days before he takes another job. I'd hate for us to miss out on a good opportunity because we waited too long." The pressure in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. Dale was pushing, trying to force a decision before I had time to think it through properly, just like he'd done with our father's will. "Set up a meeting," I said. "I'll talk to him." "Great! How about tomorrow afternoon? I could have him come by the shop around 3? "Sounds good." "You're making the right choice, Nick. This is going to be great for both of us. Both of us. Like we were still partners, like we were still brothers." I hung up and went back to work on the Mustang, but my mind was racing. Dale was moving fast, trying to consolidate his control over the business while I was still reeling from the discovery of his affair with my wife. He probably figured I'd be too distracted by my personal problems to pay attention to what he was doing professionally. He was wrong. I spent the rest of the evening making phone calls. To Jim Morrison, who confirmed that he'd never complained about our service. To 3 other major clients, who all expressed surprise when I asked if they had any concerns about our work. To my accountant, who walked me through the business's financial records and confirmed what I'd suspected. Dale had been moving money around, shifting funds in ways that made his contributions look larger and mine look smaller. By midnight, I had a clear picture of what my brother had been doing. The affair with my wife was just part of a larger plan to take over my life piece by piece. My business, my family, my reputation, he wanted it all. The old Nick would have confronted him directly, demanded an explanation, tried to work things out like family should. But the old Nick was gone, buried under the weight of too many betrayals and too much evidence that being good was just another word for being stupid. The new Nick had different plans. I opened my laptop and started researching Steve Hendricks, the shop manager Dale wanted to hire. It didn't take long to find some interesting information. Hendricks had been fired from his last 2 jobs for embezzlement. He'd never run a chain of quick lube places. He'd been a mid-level manager at a single location that had closed down after money went missing from the till. Dale's hand-picked candidate was a thief. I printed out everything I could find about Hendricks and put it in a folder. Then I made a few more calls, reaching out to contacts I'd built up over 20 years in the automotive business. People who owed me favors, who remembered when I'd helped them out of tight spots or sent business their way. By the time I went to bed, I had the beginnings of a plan. Erica was already asleep or pretending to be. I lay in the darkness listening to her breathe and thinking about Red's advice. Don't punch first, but when you do punch, make it count. Tomorrow, I was going to start hitting back. Steve Hendricks looked exactly like what he was, a small-time con man trying to dress like a successful businessman. His suit was cheap but pressed, his handshake was firm but sweaty, and his smile never quite reached his eyes. Dale had brought him to the shop at exactly 3 o'clock, introducing him like he was doing me a personal favor. "Steve, this is my brother Nick, the guy I was telling you about. Nick, Steve Hendricks." "Pleasure to meet you," Hendricks said, pumping my hand with practiced enthusiasm. "Dale's told me great things about this operation. I can see a lot of potential here." We sat in my office, the same office where my father had run the business for 30 years, where he'd taught me about integrity and hard work and treating people fairly. The same office where Dale was now trying to install a criminal to help him steal everything my family had built. "So, Steve, tell me about your experience," I said, settling back in my chair. Hendricks launched into his rehearsed pitch, talking about efficiency improvements and customer satisfaction metrics and revenue optimization strategies. He used a lot of big words to say very little, which seemed to impress Dale, but just made me tired. "That sounds interesting," I said when he finished. "Dale mentioned you used to run operations for a chain of quick lube places in Boston." "That's right, multi-location operation, very successful." "Which chain was that?" For just a second, Hendricks hesitated. It was barely noticeable, just a tiny pause before he answered, but I caught it. "Speedy Oil Change, maybe you've heard of them?" "Can't say I have. But then, I don't get to Boston much. What happened to them?" Another pause, longer this time. "Market consolidation. The big chains squeezed out the smaller operators." Dale jumped in, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "The important thing is that Steve's available and ready to start immediately. We don't want to overthink this, Nick." I opened the folder I'd prepared and pulled out the printouts I'd gathered the night before. "That's funny, Steve, because according to what I found, Speedy Oil Change was a single location in Revere that closed down after the owner discovered someone had been skimming money from the register. The same owner who fired you for theft." The color drained out of Hendricks' face. Dale's mouth fell open, and for a moment, nobody said anything. The only sound was the air compressor cycling on in the garage, a familiar mechanical rhythm that had been the soundtrack to my entire adult life. "I don't know where you got that information," Hendricks finally said, "but it's completely false. I was never—" "Save it," I interrupted, pulling out more papers. "I've got court records showing you were arrested for embezzlement in 2019. Charges were dropped when you agreed to pay restitution, but the arrest is still on your record. I've also got statements from 3 former employers describing similar problems with missing money." I looked at Dale, who was staring at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. "This is your hand-picked candidate? A guy who steals from the people who trust him?" "Nick, I had no idea. Bees." The word came out harder than I'd intended, but I didn't take it back. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You wanted someone who'd help you steal from me, just like you've been stealing everything else." Hendricks stood up quickly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe I should go." "Yeah, maybe you should. And Steve, if I see you around here again, I'm calling the police." He practically ran out of the office, leaving Dale and me alone for the first time since I'd discovered his affair with my wife. My brother sat there looking like a man who'd just watched his carefully constructed plan collapse around his ears. "Nick, let me explain." "Explain what? How you've been sabotaging my business while you screw my wife?" The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Dale's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, denial, fear, and finally a kind of resigned defiance. "How long have you known?" "Long enough. The question is, how long has it been going on?" Dale stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the garage floor, where 2 of my mechanics were working on a customer's sedan. "About 6 months. 6 months. I let that sink in. 6 months of lying to my face. 6 months of pretending to be my partner while you plotted to take over my business. 6 months of sleeping with my wife while I trusted you both. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How is it supposed to happen?" He turned back to face me, and I saw something I'd never seen in my brother's eyes before. Genuine shame. Erica was unhappy, Nick. She has been for years. She felt trapped, like her life was going nowhere. We started talking, and one thing led to another. So it's my fault. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Dale sat back down, suddenly looking older than his 41 years. I'm saying that sometimes things happen that nobody plans. Sometimes people fall in love. Love. I tasted the word like it was poison. Is that what you call it? What would you call it? Betrayal. Selfishness. Two people who decided their happiness was more important than their family. Maybe you're right, but it doesn't change how we feel about each other. I studied my brother's face, looking for some trace of the kid I'd grown up with. The kid who'd helped me build a treehouse in our backyard, who'd been my best man at my wedding, who'd cried at our father's funeral and promised we'd always be there for each other. That kid was gone, replaced by a stranger who wore expensive suits and stole other men's lives. What about Sam? I asked. How long has she known? A couple of months. Erica told her because she didn't want her to find out from someone else. But she didn't tell me. Erica wanted to wait until the time was right. When would that be? After you'd stolen my business, after you'd turned my daughter against me, after you'd destroyed everything I'd worked for. Dale didn't answer, which was answer enough. I stood up and walked around the desk until I was standing directly in front of him. He looked up at me with the expression of a man who knew he was about to get hit and wasn't sure he didn't deserve it. Get out, I said quietly. Nick, get out of my shop. Get out of my business. Get out of my life. We need to talk about this. We need to figure out how to move forward. There is no we anymore. There's no moving forward. You made your choice, and now you get to live with it. Dale stood up slowly like an old man with arthritis. What about the business? We're partners. We're partners. I'm buying you out. With what money? I smiled, and it felt like the first genuine expression I'd worn in weeks. Don't worry about that. Just have your lawyer call mine. After Dale left, I sat alone in my office for a long time, listening to the familiar sounds of the garage. Pneumatic wrenches, air hoses, the radio playing classic rock while my guys worked on the cars that kept our little corner of the world running. This was mine. My father had built it, and I'd maintained it, and no one was going to take it away from me. I picked up the phone and made the first of several calls I'd been planning. To my lawyer, to my accountant, to the bank where I'd been doing business for 20 years. By closing time, I'd set in motion a series of events that would either save my business or destroy it completely. But at least it would be my choice. I was locking up the shop when my phone rang. Erica's name appeared on the screen, and I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won out, just like it had the night I'd found her burner phone. Dale called me, she said without preamble. He told me what happened. I figured he would. We need to talk. Yeah, we do, but not over the phone. Come to the shop tomorrow morning. Early? Nick, I want you to know. Tomorrow, Erica. We'll say everything we need to say tomorrow. I hung up and drove home to the house that no longer felt like home. The house where I'd lived a lie for God knows how long, where my wife and daughter had discussed my failures while I worked in the garage below, oblivious to their contempt. But I wasn't oblivious anymore. And tomorrow, they were going to find out exactly what the new Nick Forrest was capable of. Erica arrived at the shop at 7 in the morning, an hour before we opened. She was dressed for battle in a sharp black suit and heels that clicked against the concrete floor like gunshots. Her makeup was perfect, her hair was styled, and her expression was the one she wore when she was about to close a difficult sale. You look tired, she said, which wasn't the opening I'd expected. I haven't been sleeping well. Funny how discovering your wife is cheating tends to affect your rest. She flinched slightly, but recovered quickly. We need to discuss how we're going to handle this situation. Situation? I leaned against my workbench, arms crossed. Is that what we're calling 20 years of marriage now? A situation? Don't be dramatic, Nick. We're adults. We can work through this civilly. Civilly. I tasted the word. Like you worked through your unhappiness civilly by sleeping with my brother instead of talking to me about it? Erica's composure cracked just a little. You want to talk? Fine, let's talk. When was the last time you asked me about my dreams, Nick? When was the last time you showed any interest in what I wanted out of life beyond cooking your dinner and washing your clothes? When was the last time you told me you were unhappy instead of telling Dale? I tried! God knows I tried, but you were always too busy with your engines and your tools to notice that your wife was disappearing right in front of you. She was good. I had to give her that. Even caught red-handed, she was trying to make this my fault. The old Nick Might have bought it, might have started apologizing and asking what he could do to fix things. But the old Nick was dead. So you decided to fix your disappearing act by literally disappearing into motel rooms with my brother. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. That seems to be the family motto lately. How is it supposed to happen, Erica? She walked over to the window and stared out at the empty parking lot. In the morning light, I could see the lines around her eyes that her makeup usually hid, the tension in her shoulders that her perfect posture couldn't quite disguise. I was going to ask for a divorce, she said quietly. Last year, after Sam graduated high school, I had it all planned out. We'd sit down like adults and discuss how to divide everything fairly, how to tell Sam together, how to stay friends for her sake. What changed? Dale. Dale changed your mind about the divorce? She turned back to face me, and for the first time in months, I saw something real in her expression. Not the saleswoman's smile or the perfect wife's mask, but actual emotion. Dale changed my mind about a lot of things, about what I deserved, about what was possible, about whether I had to settle for a small life just because I'd married young. There was that word again, small. The word that had been eating at me since the night I'd overheard her conversation with Sam. And what do you deserve, Erica? What's possible for you that wasn't possible with me? A partner who has ambitions beyond fixing other people's broken cars, someone who wants to build something bigger than this. She gestured around the garage like it was a prison cell instead of the business that had supported our family for 2 decades. This business put you through real estate school. It paid for Sam's college. It bought the house you're living in and the car you're driving. And I'm grateful for that. But I want more. More what? More everything. More money, more excitement, more respect. Dale understands that. He's building an empire while you're content to stay exactly where you are forever. An empire. Built on lies and theft and betrayal, but an empire nonetheless. What about Sam? I asked. How does she fit into this empire? Erica's expression softened slightly. Sam will always be our daughter. Nothing changes that. Except she's not our daughter, is she? The words hit Erica like a physical blow. She actually staggered backward, her hand reaching for the workbench to steady herself. What did you say? You heard me. I had a DNA test done, Erica. Turns out Sam isn't mine. It was a lie. I hadn't had any DNA test done. But I'd been watching Erica's face carefully when I said it, looking for the reaction that would tell me whether my growing suspicion was justified. Her reaction told me everything I needed to know. Nick, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain how my daughter, the girl I've loved and supported and worried about for 19 years, isn't actually my daughter? Can you explain how long you've been lying about that? Erica was crying now, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks in black streams. It was one night when we were separated, remember? Right after Sam was born, when we were having problems and you moved out for a month. I remembered. We'd been young and broke and overwhelmed by new parenthood. I'd been working 18-hour days trying to keep the business afloat, and Erica had been dealing with postpartum depression and a colicky baby. We'd fought about everything: money, responsibility, the future. Finally, I'd packed a bag and moved into a cheap apartment, thinking we both needed space to figure things out. Who? I asked, though I was pretty sure I already knew. Dale. He came over to check on me to see how Sam was doing. We were both drunk and emotional and stupid. It only happened once, I swear. And you never told me. What was the point? You came home, we worked things out, we were happy. Sam was yours in every way that mattered. Except biologically. Biology doesn't make you a father, Nick. Love does. And you love Sam. She was right about that. I did love Sam. Despite everything, despite her contempt for me, despite learning she wasn't my biological daughter, despite her choosing her mother's side in this war, I loved her. But love wasn't enough anymore. Does Dale know? I told him a few months ago when things got serious between us. And Sam? No. God, no, she has no idea. I walked over to my desk and pulled out a manila envelope I'd prepared the night before. Well, she's about to find out, along with everyone else. What do you mean? I mean, I'm done with secrets, Erica. I'm done with lies and betrayals and people treating me like I'm too stupid to figure out what's really going on. I handed her the envelope. Inside were copies of everything. The photos from her burner phone, the financial records showing Dale's embezzlement attempts, the DNA test results I'd actually had done after our conversation, which confirmed what her reaction had already told me, and a detailed timeline of their affair. "What are you going to do with this?" "Whatever I have to do." Erica stared at the papers like they were a capital punishment. "Nick, please, think about what this will do to Sam. Think about what it will do to all of us." "I've been thinking about it for days. And you know what I realized? You and Dale never thought about what your choices would do to me. You never considered how your lies would affect the people who trusted you. So why should I? Because you're better than we are." "No," I said quietly. "I'm just different, but not anymore." I walked to the garage door and hit the button to open it. Sunlight flooded in, along with the sounds of the town waking up, traffic, voices, the normal rhythm of people going about their lives without knowing that my world was about to explode. "You need to leave now," I told Erica. "And you need to tell Dale that he has 24 hours to accept my buyout offer for his share of the business. After that, I'm going to the police with evidence of his embezzlement attempts." "Nick, you can't—" 24 hours, Erica. And if either of you tries to contact Sam before I do, I'll make sure these photos end up on every social media platform in town." She left without another word, her heels clicking across the parking lot like a countdown timer. I watched her drive away, then went back into my office and made a phone call. "Red, it's Nick Forrest. Is your offer still open?" "What offer?" "You said if I ever wanted to learn how to really fight, you'd teach me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You sure about this, kid?" "I'm sure." "All right, then. Come by tonight after you close the shop. And Nick?" "Yeah?" "Bring your mouth guard. You're going to need it." I spent the rest of the day working on cars and waiting for my phone to ring. Dale called at noon, then again at 2, then again at 4. I let every call go to voicemail. Erica texted me twice, pleading for a chance to talk things through. I deleted both messages without reading them completely. At 6 o'clock, I locked up the shop and drove to Red's gym. The old boxer was waiting for me with a pair of gloves and a look that said he knew exactly what kind of fight I was preparing for. "Are you ready to learn how to hit back?" he asked. "I've been ready my whole life." "Good, because tomorrow you're going to find out what you're really made of." He was right about that. Tomorrow the war would begin in earnest. And this time, I was going to win. The town's annual Founders' Day celebration was held every September in Riverside Park, a sprawling piece of green space that bordered the river where our ancestors had first settled 200 years ago. It was the kind of event that brought out everyone, families with young children, teenagers looking for something to do, old-timers who remembered when the celebration was smaller and the town was younger. It was also the perfect place for a public execution. I arrived early, before the crowds gathered, and found the spot I'd been planning to use for weeks. The gazebo in the center of the park had been decorated with red, white, and blue bunting, and a small stage had been set up for the various speakers and performers who would entertain the crowd throughout the day. By noon, the park was packed. I could see Erica across the crowd, standing with Dale near the food trucks, both of them scanning the area like they were looking for something, or someone. Sam was there too, home from college for the weekend. She was with a group of her high school friends, laughing and taking selfies like she didn't have a care in the world. Like her entire life wasn't about to change forever. I'd spent the morning making final preparations. Phone calls to local reporters, emails to certain members of the community who I knew would spread the word quickly, and one last visit to my lawyer to make sure everything I was about to do was legal. It was. At 2 o'clock, Mayor Patterson took the stage to give his annual speech about community values and the importance of tradition. He was followed by the high school marching band, then a group of local business owners who talked about economic development and the bright future ahead for our little town. When the last speaker finished, I made my move. I walked up to the stage before anyone could stop me and took the microphone from the surprised volunteer who was trying to pack up the sound equipment. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying across the park through the speakers. "I'm sorry to interrupt your celebration, but I have something important to share with all of you." The crowd turned to look at me with the mixture of curiosity and annoyance that people show when their entertainment is unexpectedly interrupted. I could see Erica pushing through the crowd toward the stage, her face pale with panic. "My name is Nick Forrest, and most of you know me as the owner of Forrest Auto Repair. What you might not know is that for the past 6 months, my wife and my brother have been conducting an affair behind my back." A murmur went through the crowd like electricity. People started pulling out their phones, some to record what was happening, others to call friends and family who were missing the show. Now, I know what you're thinking, I continued, warming to my subject. This is between family members. This is private business. This isn't something that should be aired in public. Erica had reached the edge of the stage and was trying to get my attention, gesturing frantically for me to stop. Dale was right behind her, his face red with anger and embarrassment. But here's the thing about family business. Sometimes it affects more than just the family. Sometimes it affects the whole community. I pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying and held it up for everyone to see. In here, I have evidence that my brother Dale has been trying to steal my business through fraud and embezzlement. I have proof that he hired a convicted thief to help him do it. And I have documentation showing that this affair has been going on while both of them lied to my face and took my money. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. I could see Mrs. Henderson from the grocery store, Jim Morrison from the trucking company, dozens of customers and neighbors and people I'd known my entire life. But that's not even the best part, I said, opening the envelope. The best part is that 19 years ago, during a brief separation from my wife, my brother got her pregnant. My daughter, the girl I've loved and raised and supported through college, isn't actually my daughter. Sam's scream cut through the air like a knife. I could see her across the crowd, her hands over her mouth, her friends staring at her with shock and confusion. Now, I want to be clear about something, I continued, looking directly at Sam. I love that girl more than life itself. Biology doesn't change that, but lies do. Betrayal does. Being treated like a fool by the people who are supposed to love you, that changes everything. Dale had climbed onto the stage and was moving toward me, but I stepped away from him, keeping the microphone out of his reach. My brother and my wife decided that I was too small for their big dreams, too ordinary for their extraordinary plans. They decided that what I'd built wasn't good enough for them, so they were going to take it and improve it. I looked out at the crowd, seeing faces I'd known for decades, people who'd brought their cars to my shop, who'd trusted me with their business and their friendship. Well, here's what I think about that. I think loyalty matters. I think honesty matters. I think when you make promises to people, when you marry them, when you go into business with them, when you call them family, those promises mean something. Dale lunged for the microphone, but I was ready for him. Red's training had paid off. I sidestepped his grab and pushed him away, sending him stumbling backward into the sound equipment. And I think when people break those promises, there should be consequences. I pulled out the photos I printed from Erica's burner phone, not the explicit ones, but compromising enough to make the point, and held them up for the crowd to see. So, here are your consequences. Dale Forrest is a thief and a liar who tried to steal my business while he was sleeping with my wife. Erica Forrest is a cheater who's been living a double life for months while spending my money and lying to my face. The crowd was in chaos now, people shouting questions, others trying to get closer to the stage, still others backing away like they were afraid of getting caught in the blast radius. And Sam Forrest! I looked directly at my daughter, who was crying openly now, her friends forming a protective circle around her. Sam Forrest deserves to know the truth about who her real father is, even if it hurts. I dropped the microphone and walked off the stage, pushing through the crowd toward the parking lot. Behind me, I could hear Dale shouting my name, could hear Erica trying to explain something to someone, could hear the buzz of 100 conversations starting at once. I made it to my truck before Dale caught up with me. He grabbed my shoulder and spun me around, his face twisted with rage. "You son of a witch!" he snarled. "You just destroyed everything." "No," I said calmly. "You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone knew about it." He swung at me, a wild haymaker that would have connected if I hadn't been expecting it. I ducked under his punch and came up with an uppercut that caught him in the solar plexus, doubling him over. Red had been right about making it count. "Stay away from my shop," I told him as he gasped for air. "Stay away from my house. Stay away from me." I got in my truck and drove away, leaving behind the chaos and the shouting and the wreckage of my old life. In my rearview mirror, I could see people gathering around Dale, helping him to his feet, probably asking him if the things I'd said were true. They were true. Every word of them. I drove to the shop and sat in my office waiting for the phone to ring. It didn't take long. The first call was from a reporter at the local newspaper asking if I wanted to make an official statement. I declined. The second call was from my lawyer, telling me that Dale's attorney had already contacted him about accepting the buyout offer. Apparently, my brother had decided that a quick exit was better than a prolonged legal battle. The third call was from Sam. Daddy? Her voice was small and broken, like it had been when she was little and had scraped her knee or lost a toy. Hey, sweetheart. Is it true? About Uncle Dale being my real father? I closed my eyes and tried to find the right words. It's true. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know until recently. And because it doesn't change how I feel about you. But you hate me now, because of what I said about you. Because I knew about Mom and Uncle Dale and didn't tell you. I don't hate you, Sam. I'm disappointed and I'm hurt, but I don't hate you. I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm so sorry. I know you are. Can you forgive me? I thought about that for a long moment. Could I forgive her? Could I forgive any of them? I don't know, I said finally. But I'm willing to try. After I hung up, I sat in my office as the sun set outside my window, painting the garage in shades of orange and red. Tomorrow, I'd have to deal with the fallout from what I'd done, the gossip, the judgment, the inevitable questions about whether I'd gone too far. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I'd lost my wife, my brother, and the family I'd thought I had, but I'd kept my business, my self-respect, and my daughter's love. More importantly, I'd stopped being the sufferer of other people's choices and started making my own. The phone rang one more time. Erica's name appeared on the screen, and I stared at it for several rings before answering. What do you want? I want to apologize for everything. Okay? That's it? Just okay? What else do you want me to say, Erica? That I forgive you? That I understand? That we can work this out? I want you to say something. Anything. I want you to fight for us. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I did fight for us. For 20 years, I fought for us. I worked 60-hour weeks to support us. I put up with your complaints and your coldness and your obvious unhappiness because I thought that's what married people did. I fought for us right up until the moment I realized that you'd already given up. Nick, no. You don't get to do this. You don't get to destroy everything we built and then ask me to help you put it back together. So what happens now? Now you live with the consequences of your choices, just like I'm living with mine. I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside, the town was probably still buzzing with the news of what had happened at the park. People would be taking sides, spreading rumors, speculating about what would happen next. But that was their business. My business was here, in this garage my father had built and I had maintained, and no one would ever take away from me again. I walked out to the Mustang I'd been restoring and ran my hand along its newly painted surface. The car was finally finished, every bolt tightened, every system tested, every detail perfect. Tomorrow I'd take it for a drive. I'd feel the engine I'd rebuilt with my own hands, hear the exhaust note I'd tuned to perfection, experience the satisfaction of taking something broken and making it whole again. It was a skill that had served me well in my professional life. Now I'd get to see if it worked on people too.